cut my dreadlocks, 'cause I found you.
Welcome back. Now we're looking at International Peace Day. Each year, International Peace Day is observed around the 21st of September. The General Assembly has declared this a day devoted to strengthening the ideals of peace, both within and among all nations and peoples. It's a day that is celebrated all around the world, and there were meetings, United Nations meetings yesterday, I think it was in Brazil, to celebrate International Peace Day. To look at this with us this morning, we have the Executive Director at the CLO, Mr. Ibuchukwu Ezike.
God bless Nigeria.
And we also have Mr. Japheth Omojuwa, who is a blogger.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Now, what, Mr. Ezike, what initiated the setting aside of this particular day?
Well, it was a motion or resolution that was moved by Costa Rica and the United Kingdom at the UN General Assembly in 1981. And to set a day aside when nations, societies, people at war will cease for the aid, to those persons that are fighting the war, the refugees and all that, to have access to humanitarian services. So that was basically why the day was set up aside by the United Nations. And I've mentioned the movers of the motion. It was accepted by the entire United Nations General Assembly. But it was started off in 1982 because it didn't take off in 1981. Mm-hmm. And by 2001, then it was being celebrated every third Tuesday of the month of September. But in 2001, our brother and the immediate past Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, moved the motion that this thing should be celebrated on the 21st of September. That was how we come about celebrating the International Peace Day on the 21st of September.
Did anything momentous happen yesterday to mark the September 21st, 2012?
In Nigeria or across the world?
In Nigeria, across the world?
Well, ordinarily, a lot of things were done, but here in Nigeria, I have not noticed any memorable occasion to honor this day. Because if we are talking about peace, madam, we first of all look at the situation. Is the world at peace? Is Nigeria at peace? So these are the things. I look at this as cosmetic, even the acceptance by the General Assembly, who are different heads of states in their own countries. But across the world, there are crises, stimulated by these leaders. Because in all these places where you have hunger, like in Nigeria, you have poverty, you have injustice, and you have people not being accessible to means of livelihood. So there's no way you can have peace. Like in just now, where they are killing people every day, people are refugees. In the Niger Delta, where there are a lot of desperation, oil companies are, polluting the place, and those people cannot.
Let me ask you, don't you think that the principle behind the idea of World Peace Day is celebrate the little amount of peace you have with a view to acknowledge it and then work towards having more of it?
So what do you acknowledge? For instance, in
Europe, there's absolutely no peace at all anywhere in the world.
There are peace in some places, in some families.
In your home.
In my home, there's peace,
yes.
And there's also crisis.
Isn't that enough?
There is peace and there's crisis. Yes, we don't have to shy away from it. For instance, if you don't put food on the table on the family, would there be peace? If your children were starting school now and you cannot pay children's school fees, they won't allow you to rest. You won't even come to the home, no matter how peaceful. So the whole thing is about social dislocation.
Okay, let's ask Japheth. In terms of celebration of peace, what is your thought on this?
I think it's a fundamental thing, because for us to set a day aside for peace means that we are at war. So So we need a day to say, let's stop fighting. So when you look at it logically, that means every other day, apart from the International Day of Peace, is not the International Day of Peace. And if there is no peace, then what are you talking about? And peace in itself is not just a thing. Peace is a product of many things, because peace is the presence of harmony. And you can't say harmony for one thing. Harmony is a function of many other things. So you're talking, like you were saying, you're talking about justice, you're talking about inequality. But at the end of the day, it's about the fact that we can appreciate the fact that we at least set a day aside, because it looks like everything, every day, everywhere, something wrong is going on. So we can at least set a day aside, whether Boko Haram, whether Assad, wherever you are, set a day aside and say, okay, for today, let's even appreciate peace and see if we can actually live on a day like this and see how we can continue to do it on other days. So it's a day to appreciate what peace could be and how peace could feel, so that we could look at ways of making it, taking it beyond just one day.
So now, Japheth, how effective is what you're just saying in light of Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, even within Nigeria? I'm sure Boko Haram did something or the other yesterday, which was supposed to be International Peace Day. It's not as if UN called for, okay, let's all have ceasefire just for today. If it's just for a few hours, let's just experience world peace for a few hours of today to celebrate Peace Day. That didn't happen.
There are conventions of war, and there are laws that guide wars. There are laws, for instance, that says once a soldier does like this, you don't shoot him, you just take him on. But you know, not all these wars are conventional wars. For instance, the Boko Haram war is not a conventional war, so they are not bound by international principles of war. Every war that is more or less bound by international principles of war they will not go and fight yesterday. Because I'm not talking about the guerrilla wars and the wars, all these terrorists and all these things, but a war between, say, a United States, I'm just saying, the United States and Iraq, for instance, if it's a real war between soldiers and soldiers, they won't shoot on that day. It's not just because of the fact that, of course, you feel like it defeats the purpose if they shoot the next day, but the ability to actually sit down and think through.
Peace.
You might be able to think through, but at the end of the day, the world is in a lot of commotion. A lot of things are going on. I don't know how many people actually know that yesterday was even a day of peace. And if individuals don't have peace in their minds and in their hearts and in their homes, how are we going to have a world with peace? Because it's about harmony.
Okay, let's find out, in terms of what we should be doing. If we're saying that, yes, United Nations has said International Peace Day, and there is an ambition there. And in terms of actualizing that ambition, what do you think? Let's situate it home now in Nigeria. What should we be doing to make peace a reality for us?
God bless you, sir. Like I said before, when there's injustice, no matter how you preach peace, Bob Marley says everybody's crying for peace, nobody's crying for justice. And knowing full well that justice beggars peace. So if, for instance, in Nigeria in 2001, the National Assembly promulgated the minimum wage law. And everybody was happy. In March, before the national elections, the bill was signed into law by the president. Today, how many states have implemented the minimum wage law? And so you cannot have peace between the workers and the employers. In January this year, there was an uprising by Nigerian people, the Occupy Nigerian protest, which we started. We mobilized Nigerians to reject the corruption in the oil sector. A few weeks ago, or a few days ago, Mr. President credited the whole thing to politicians that who were sponsored. I've been detained for 23 times in my war against indiscipline and social injustice in this country. Ganifa Emi died fighting injustice in this country. Femi Falana, Olisa Agbakoba, the father of the civil society movement in Nigeria. Dr. Dion Sylvester, who is a lecturer at University of Lagos State University, was thrown from a moving lorry when he was released from a prison by agents of the state. And so we can go on and on. Debek Oranson Kuti, Chimubani of the blessed memory, who even died in active service, in this country in 2005. Mr. President just dismissed the whole thing as an act of politician that we are sponsored. At this age, somebody can sponsor me to do what is not acceptable to me. So such a statement can trigger off violence.
Okay.
We can go on and on. The UNEP report on Ogoni